The House comes to questions for oral answer. Question number 1 in the name of Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change Issues and asks, does he care what New Zealanders think about climate change, and does he take their calls for action on climate change seriously?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
On behalf of the Minister, yes.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is his response to Stephen Keach, who asks, given that the majority of known fossil fuel reserves must remain unburnt if we are to keep below 2 degrees of warming, why is the government continuing to pursue a program of fossil fuel exploration?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Because I think the world needs to transition to a lower carbon economy. We can't turn off the tap overnight. Indeed, not all fossil fuels are created equally. For example, gas can play a significant role given its significantly lower emissions in displacing coal. As I say, not all non-renewables are created equal.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is his response to Michelle Rail from Levin, who asks, when will the government start investing in the reforestation of New Zealand's hills and wetlands in native trees and bush, which will help to offset our emissions?
Speaker.
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
On behalf of the Minister, we are supporting a number of reforestation projects of New Zealand's hills and wetlands. I think examples include, over the next 5 years, $20 million available for forestation under the Erosion Control Funding Program. Of course, the Permanent Forest Sink Initiative, which supports those creating permanent forest sinks of either native or exotic species, and the government and Fonterra sharing coordination of a $20 million community investment fund, which will allocate funds to protect sensitive water catchments through projects such as planting, pest control and the like. So I think there are a range of things we are doing in relation to reforestation of New Zealand's hills and wetlands.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russel Norman.
What is his response to Dennis Tegg from Coromandel, who asks, when will the government comply with the terms of the international memorandum it recently signed and end all domestic fossil fuel subsidies, including production subsidies?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, I think it's important first to outline the government does not subsidise the consumption of fossil fuels and has called for other countries indeed to phase out their subsidies of fossil fuels in the lead up to the Paris Climate Conference in December this year. We're also a leading member of the Friends for Fossil Fuel Subsidy Reform group, and indeed I'd also note that the Minister of Energy and Resources has submitted New Zealand recently, in fact second country to do so, to an APEC peer review of our fossil fuel subsidies.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is his response to Ian Palmer from Masterton, who asks, if the government is taking climate change seriously, why then is it allowing Kiwi Rail...
Order. Allow the member to ask his question.
If the government is taking climate change seriously, why is it allowing Kiwi Rail to withdraw the electric locomotives on the main trunk line and replace them with fossil fuel-powered locomotives?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, we do take climate change seriously, and I hope my answers have indicated that to both this House and the public. I understand Kiwi Rail is considering a number of options for locomotives used on the Auckland to Wellington line. At this stage, no final decisions have been made.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is his response to Sam Gribben from Wellington, who asks, the government says we are playing our part with regard to ISIS, a small but an important symbolically role. Why doesn't the same apply to climate change?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, well, I think, as the government's repeatedly stated, we're committed to doing our fair share on climate change. We take responsibility for our emissions in a way that doesn't impose unreasonable costs on households and businesses. We've got a climate change response that's comparable to the efforts of other countries, and we play a leadership role globally where we can make the greatest contribution. One such example is the Global Research Alliance, which we've seen significant research developments in over the last 24, 48 hours that I think are actually very exciting for our emissions profile.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is his response to Jim Robinson from Opotiki, who asks, you may laugh.
Order. Just finish the question.
Has there been comprehensive forecasting on the total cost to the New Zealand economy resulting from a 1 metre rise in sea level? If not, why not?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, no, it's not clear that would be relevant given the uncertainty around the time over which 1 metre rise might occur. The correct approach to preparing for climate change, we believe, is to have robust planning that allows for this uncertainty. The government provides guidance to local government and recommends a risk-based approach, including all hazards, not just the sea level rise.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is his response to Stephanie O'Brien from Auckland, who asks, given the increasing number of climate change-related deaths, would the Minister agree that it is completely immoral that the government has issued 16 oil and gas exploration permits in 2014?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, I simply don't accept the premise of the question.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is his response to Cindy Baxter from Piha, who asks, what is the advice from Treasury on the cost to New Zealand of climate change impacts at 2 degrees Celsius warming or 4 degrees Celsius warming, and does any such advice even exist?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, Treasury hasn't provided such advice.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Honourable Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In light of the huge increase in net greenhouse gas emissions under this government, is he prepared for this government to be remembered as the one that failed today's and future generations of New Zealanders by refusing to act on climate change?
Speaker.
Honourable Simon Bridges.
On behalf of the Minister, again, I don't accept that at all. I think, and I hope that I've demonstrated both this House and the public that we do take climate change seriously. We're committed to doing our fair share. We have a comprehensive emissions trading scheme. We show international leadership in areas of comparative advantage. Again, I note the Global Research Alliance and the very significant research that's doing that's really, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say, world leading, as well as significant work we do at home and in our own backyard with many millions of dollars going into Pacific renewables projects and the like. I think New Zealanders can hold their head up on this issue and see that we are, as I say, certainly doing our fair share.
Question number 2, Joanne Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.